Okay, so let's continue our discussion on some of the basics in Python. So we'll talk about the input function today, which is a very important function. We'll use this a lot in our programming. We'll talk about the type function, and we've looked at the round function. We'll just look at a few more examples of the round function. Now we talked about the variable naming convention last time. This is the same slide we looked at, right? One of the things that I wanted to emphasize and add to this was that never, so it's a word of caution, right? Never use Python's built-in function, right, as variables. So let's say that print is a built-in function that we've looked at, right? Don't say print. Never define a variable print equals 2. This would seem like obvious to you, right? You won't do that, right? So if you say print equals 2, Python is going to let you do it, which is really not a good thing. But if now you say print 2, or print, let's say, anything, hello, so you messed up the whole thing, right? You've changed Python's built-in function, and Python is now complaining on a basic thing, and this happens a lot of times. And the student is like lost, what's going on, Python is messing up. Well, the reason is that you have used Python's built-in function and defined it as a variable, so obviously you're going to get into trouble for that. Sometimes Python doesn't let you do it. Python would say that it's a syntax error, because there's a format to write the syntax for statement. So Python is complaining now. But like for functions like print or list, right, what you can do to fix this, del print, right? So now that variable is deleted, and so now print if hello is going to work fine. Also, a very common problem, and please don't do this in future classes when we discuss lists. I'll try to emphasize on this later on also, but make sure you don't do this. So when we use the list function, right, this happens a lot. It's intuitive that, okay, I'm defining a list, I want to call it a list. Don't do that, because Python, that's a reserved word in Python. You cannot do that. So if you say, okay, list 1, 2, and then you're trying to use that list later on, Python is gonna drive you crazy. And this happens almost every semester, so please don't do that. This semester I'm emphasizing this in the beginning. So now this is a built-in Python function, right? So it's creating problems now. So you can say del, and so you can see that if I do list, and then I want to convert, the list function converts, let's say, any iterable into a list over here. So it typically converts this string into a list, but it's not doing that because of that variable that's defined. So if you do list, it tells you that this is a variable, but now the list function itself has lost its its functionality. So you can what you can do again is do del list, right? So now your function is back on track, and so it's a class now, and you can now convert again string. So now that that string is converted into a list. We'll talk about this more, but again, you can see the list of commands that you have used on the console also. Okay, so let's get back to the slide. The type function tells you the type of the variable or the number that you're using, right? So you can also use a variable name with the type function. So one is an integer. It says it's a class that is integer. Similarly for floats, and this is a string. Anything under quotes is a string in Python. So we've seen this before, right? Augmented assignments. It's just another example. So if, let's say, you have numbers equals 10, you want to add 2 to that, that's fine. You just write c equals c plus 2, but you can also use augmented assignments. So this is the same as c equals c plus 3, and so that adds to 3, adds a 3 to c, which is now 15, and this is the same as c equals c multiplied by 3, right? And that's 45, because 3 multiplied by 15 is 45. The int function, I think we looked at this, right? It's just going to get rid of any digits after the decimal place and just return an integer. Now the str function is an important function. It converts anything within the parentheses into a string, right? And the float function is going to convert anything into a float. And these are very important functions when we use, and this is related to the input function. So that's why I'm mentioning these over here. When you are by default, the input statement, right, is a string, so you have to convert it into a float or an integer if you are expecting an integer from the user. So round, we talked about round. So 1.8, it's just how you round numbers. 1.8 is 2, 1.5 is 2, and 1.45 is 1. But that's the default value. So if you want to round up to a particular digit after the decimal place, you can also do that. This is going to round to the second digit after the decimal place. So it's 1.23. It gets rid of these 3 digits. If you want 5, it's just going to return the whole number as it is. If you want just 1, it's just 1.2. Okay, so let's look at the input function. So let's go to Sunny. So the input function is, let's clear this up. The input function is a very, very useful function. So let's say that I type in input, right? Just like input, right? Nothing else. So now you can see that the cursor is just blinking. And why is it blinking? Because it's waiting for me to type something. And so when I do that, it prints out what I typed in, and you can see that it's a string. Okay, so make sure you note this, and this is again something that comes up a lot of times later on, that the input function by default converts whatever you enter into a string. And so if I want to, so now let's do it, let's be more formal. Okay, so now I want the user to enter a value for a. Now if I press enter, it's going to wait, right? So okay, let's say I press 3, right? So now a has a value of 3, but notice that if you want, you can do that. What is the type of a? It's a string. So now let's say if I want to multiply let's say 3 with this, you can see that it repeats, and this is how strings behave in Python. It basically replicates that or duplicates that string multiple times. But if you want to convert, if you want this a to behave as a number, you can do 2 things. And notice, make sure you're typing along with me. Okay, so now if I do this, we can do 2 things. We can directly convert this, and this is what I would recommend, because that reduces a line of code, right? You can just directly convert. You don't really need these spaces. Just typing in for clarity. So now whatever I enter, right, Python is going to convert it into an integer. So let's say again I enter 5. Now a is 5. Now a is an integer, right? And you can again see that it's an integer, and now you can multiply it with any number, and you get the the correct answer. So just please be careful with that. Again, you can also do that as a separate line of code, but I would recommend just convert it directly into an integer, or you can also do a float, right? Float. So now whatever you enter, like 11, now you can see that it's 11.0, and its type is a float now. Okay, so let's look at this example. What is the bird city? So in this, this is just a simple example. So now this is a variable that's defined, right? The input is so yeah, one more thing is that whatever you enter in the int, right? So let's say that you want to say a equals, if you want to tell the user something, right, enter something, right, you can also say enter, which is obviously the which is obviously something you'll do quite a lot. So enter a number, right? So now obviously the user knows that they have to enter a number, and it will convert it into an integer, right? So now, input. Here you go. And then we want to do that. There you go. Now, now the user knows that they have to enter a number, right? So, if the user enters 7, let's say right now A is 7. So whatever the value is for this input, this is just a display thing, right? Python is going to display this so that the user knows what to do when the input statement is executed. So in this example, a simple example, the user is asked to enter a city, right? Their city of birth, and that's for me it's Dubai. So that birth cities. Now, so now we don't have to use the str function over here. Notice that, because by default the input statement is gonna convert anything that the user enters to string. If you now if you, let's say, want the age, you can define the age as a variable, right? Your age is this, right? We'll talk more about the print statement, how does the print statement works. There's there are a few details about this. So now you can type in, okay, your age is plus str, convert this into a string, and so this is the output for this print statement. But you can also ask the user what is their age, right? So in this case now the user is asked, instead of defining it as a variable, and then the user enters an age, and you print out, okay, your age is that variable that the user entered. Now this is how you concatenate. This is called concatenation. We'll talk more about this. This is called concatenation. You're joining the two strings. You have to convert the age into a string, because it is an integer. Well, this is supposed to be an int. Right? This is what I was. So when you type it in, make sure you type int over here. So when this is an integer, right, you want to convert it into a string, because you can only concatenate two strings when they are strings, right? So you can also continue the concatenation and add another. So this is the part that you have added, right? So you have added another string, right? Let me illustrate what I said. So again, age. What I said was, okay, age is, let's say you ask the user input, enter age, right? When you run this, it's the user enters, let's say 36, and so age is it's a string. Now you can see that it's a string, right? So now what I'm saying is that you wanna this should, it's obviously you're entering a number, so you expect it to be an integer. So let's say it's 36. Now age is going to be an integer. Okay. So so now if I want to print age, so your age, right? So that's so now if you type in, let's say, plus and then age, right, you can see that there's a problem, right? It says that it must be a string. This is a very common error that you'll come across. So what you want to do is you can do two things. You can either add a comma over here. So this is an easier thing, and I would recommend you do that. But sometimes you want to add it. You want to concatenate a string, so you want to convert that into a string, so that you can concatenate the two. So you can see the outputs are the same, but in this case this is an integer, and in this case this is a string, because it's from concatenating two strings. Okay, so one of the things about Python is that it has these built-in modules that you can use They're basically packages that have these functions, useful functions that you can use. So you can import these, think of this as a big Python program that has these functions that you can use. And so the way you can use the function is by typing in the module name, right? So this is the name of the module, and you can basically transfer the whole module in your program by using the import statement, which is a built-in Python function. So now you type in math.py and you can get the value of pi using this, and math.sqrt. So you can do the square root using this, or you can also say 9 and then star 0.5, right? So that also gives you the square root. Let's quickly see. So we're going to take the square root of 16. You can also do 0.5. So that gives you 4. So that's another way, but it has other useful functions like sine and cosine, which we're not going to use, but in some cases we'll probably use that way later, maybe later. But this is an important module that we might use in the worksheets. So please make sure you note this. Okay, so go ahead and solve the worksheet. It should be posted on Canvas now. And so again, write a script, answer all the questions, and submit your worksheet and the submission should be available in the assignment section.